This is the Tobor 535 podcast. I'm Tayden.
I'm Ethan.
I'm Luca.
I'm Gwen.
I'm Emily.
I'm Ian.
I'm Evie.
With our qualifiers coming up, it's more important to think about scouting more seriously and how exactly you're going to do that.
Alright, so for any rookie teams or any experienced teams who for some reason don't know what scouting is, scouting is when you're at the competition and you go and talk to the other teams that are at the same competition with you. Just try to get some info on them, what their robot can do, and talk to them about their capabilities, what they believe they can do. And it's usually best to pair this by going and actually watching the team's matches, so then you can see if their actual performance stands up with what they talked about.
So we use two systems of scouting, like she said, one talking with other teams at the pit areas and also watching the competition during matches. So we have competition scouting sheets that we use that are set up with all the different ways you can score points, and then any additional information regarding autonomous or anything like that that we think would be important to know about different teams. And so as we go around to talk with teams, we make sure to have them answer all the questions, and then we send representatives to go watch the field competitions that they're participating in, and we compare what they said with what they were actually able to do. And that gives us more of an indicator of what their robot is actually capable of.
One very important reason why you'll need to scout is that during autonomous, you can't just add up points. For one thing, if both you and your opponent say that you can move the foundation, you can't both move the foundation, so you got to be careful when you're adding up points from your team and other teams to see what you might estimate the alliance getting. Another thing you have to keep in mind is if your your alliance partner and you start on the build side or the landing side of your half of the field, because you can't both start on the same side, so you got to be careful to coordinate that. And finally, you have to be careful to coordinate the paths that the two robots will take and what scoring elements they're using, because if you don't coordinate that, you can end up colliding with your alliance partner, and that can cause some pretty serious problems. You can end up breaking your robots and then, of course, losing points in autonomous. So it's very important to coordinate with your alliance partner and strategize before you get to the field how you're going to handle that. And if any modifications need to be made to either autonomous, then you have a chance to make those. So to streamline our scouting process and kind of collect all the data in one place and make it easy to see, our team has actually developed a scouting spreadsheet that we use for this purpose. It's in Excel, and it takes into account all of our what we can do and what our opponent can do, and there are all kinds of interesting things that you have to take into account. For example, only one person can move the foundation. Both people can't run a building zone autonomous. So again, if you're going to try to estimate points and try to scout in a sort of objective, empirical way to choose partners in alliance selection, which we'll get to a bit later, it's very important to remember that when you're adding up points, it's not as easy as add up their total, add up your total, because you have to watch out for conflicting movements of the foundation or parking or whatever else.
Another just important aspect of scouting is just to talk to your alliance partner beforehand, so you have a good idea of not just what your autonomy can do before you go into your round, but also what you're going to do in teleop, so you can make a plan together to know what you're going to do, especially for like an in-game when someone has to go and move the foundation.
So it's important during teleop to coordinate with your alliance partners to see where the robots are going and like where you plan on going, and who's gonna grab the blocks and bring it over the sky bridge, and who's gonna grab the blocks and stack it, or if you're both gonna try and go and grab blocks and stack at the same time. You kind of just have to plan beforehand and then try and actually do it during driving. It's also good for your coaches to communicate during the match, just to make sure that if you need them to move out of the way for you to move the foundation, or if you need them to get out of the way for you to get under the sky bridge, then make sure your coaches are communicating so that you can get your point across easier.
So the next step in a competition is you gotta select. If you get to be a captain of a alliance, You have to select an alliance partner. So, a big part of selecting an alliance partner is not always trusting the rankings, but you have to find other robots that work well with you. For example, like, you could match up with the second best team, but if your autonomouses both do the exact same thing and both require to start in the same place, it's not a very good idea to do that, because now you have one robot that just has no autonomous points. Now, that could be a big drag if another alliance has 2 robots running an autonomous. So you have to both find robots that are good with your robot, and you have to also look at how they've been doing throughout the day too, because another robot may be good with your robot, but if it's unreliable and prone to just falling apart, you don't want to select them because they might just fall apart in your match. Another thing about it too is you can't trust the rankings because there's a bit of luck involved depending on how people get matched together, because someone can get matched with another robot that works perfectly with the robot. They couldn't be better together, and have matches similar to that the entire day, and another robot can get matched with just robots they cannot work with. Like, their autonomouses conflict, and it's just on the way they drive on the field conflicts, and it's just terrible that way. And that can be matches like that for them the whole day, but their robot still may be amazing. So there's just, when you can't trust the rankings fully, because there's just luck involved, and if something happens to another robot and it falls apart, or just something unlucky for a match and it drags them down. So you really have to pay attention to your scouting before and during matches. That's partially what it's there for, is to help you figure out who is the best teams to work with you.
This has been the Tobor Spare Parts Podcast. Thanks for listening in, and make sure to come back for more robotics-related content.